All right, good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I am Reed Miller, and I am honored to be the newest president of the Rotary Club of Portland. Welcome to our live weekly membership meeting. I want to open by saying thank you to those of you that joined us last week at Washington Park. It was refreshing to see some familiar, smiling, maskless faces at the event. I understand that these virtual meetings don't provide the same sense of camaraderie that we get from our in-person meetings, but I want you all to know that my first priority as president is to get our meetings back to in-person as quickly as we can do so in a safe and comfortable manner. To start the year, we will have the first meeting of the month in person for August and September, so mark your calendars and register on our website and join us back at the Sentinel on August 3rd and September 7th. That's August 3rd and September 7th. We'll be back at the Sentinel. Please go on our website and register for those events. All of our other weekly luncheons will continue to be held virtually for the time being. All right, it's a new Rotary year, which means we have a new Rotary theme. The theme for this year's Rotary International is Serve to Change Lives. This is an easy one. I don't think it requires a whole lot of thinking. I think it's pretty simple and straight to the point. I think it does a great job of highlighting and reminding us why we all became Rotarians. We are here to serve, to change lives. Let's focus on that and let's get fired up about it. The efforts that we make change lives. It's important to remember that. When we are asked to serve in one capacity or another, we aren't just asking you to serve on a committee or on a board or to help with a service project. We're asking for your help to change lives. All right, let's dive right in. Everybody, please welcome Rotarian Patrick Galvin to give our weekly reflection.
Thank you so much, Reed. It is great to join you. Why am I the only one at the Sentinel Hotel today? I don't know. I just showed up here. Love Zoom, love virtual backgrounds. Okay, my reflection. Today I was in a meeting with insurance agency owners from throughout the state of Oregon, and many of them were saying that their agents are trying to connect about business right away when they're meeting face-to-face with their customers and with their referral partners, and that they're telling people, hey, wait, take a pause. It's been a long time since we've seen a lot of these people. And I think this applies to Rotarians meeting each other as well as business people meeting business people. And don't be afraid to say, hey, how have you been doing during the pandemic? How has it gone for you? And then pause. Let them talk. Listen to them. Figure out how you can be of service to them. It might be in some unexpected way because you listen to them say how they're doing, and there might be a resource or something that you can give them, maybe just an encouraging word. I think right now we need to just take a pause and really be present with people. I want to leave you with a favorite quote on this point. This is from the author Anne LeClaire, and she said that silence is not an absence, but a presence. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Patrick. And if anybody else would be willing to volunteer to give a weekly reflection, Siobhan has put the link in the chat, or you can email Siobhan directly. We thank you for those reflections. Now I would ask that any Rotarians who have invited a guest to raise their hand, and Corinne will call on you to unmute and to introduce your guests. Or if you're a guest who came on your own, please raise your hand and introduce yourself or say hi in the chat box.
I know Danielle said she had some guests. Danielle, do you have any to introduce?
Yes, Chase Green has joined us today for the first time. He is checking out our U40 program and becoming a member of the club. I don't see my other guest yet, but welcome, Chase. You might wave.
And Terry has his hand raised. Do you have some guests?
I don't have any guests, but a couple of new people who joined Corinne and I in our Gearing Up session just right before our meeting wanted to make sure that they took a moment to introduce themselves. So Virginia Archer, if you want to unmute yourself first and tell us a little bit about you, very brief.
Hey guys, manager of donor relations at Catholic Charities. I've been a guest a few times at the club, but excited to learn more and connect with more of you guys.
Thank you, Virginia. And Lisa Seams.
Hey, everybody. I'm Lisa Seams, recruiter and business development manager at Flux Resources. Terry and I worked together at Canopy, and he spoke such highly great things about Rotary, and I'm really excited to get involved.
Thanks. And Corinne, I didn't see Edward in there, but Edward, if you're
Sure.
joining us, if you want to unmute and say hello as well really quick, that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Edward Gutierrez. I'm the owner of Lucky Day. It's a post house for post-production for video, commercials, documentaries, and whatnot. And my father was a Rotarian, and I loved going to Rotary with him, and I'm excited to get on board if I can.
Thank you. Any other guests today? All right, back to you, Reed.
Awesome. Thank you, Corinne. And thank you, Chase, Virginia, Lisa, and Edward. Glad to have you all today. And thank you for attending. We look forward to having you back next time. Now on to our monthly birthday celebration. For those of you that have forgotten, it's July. I'd like to say happy birthday to everyone with a birthday this month. Please take note of the birthdays. Don't forget to wish our fellow Rotarians a happy birthday. We have several changes to our club's bylaws that our members need to vote on. You'll receive an email next week with the proposed changes, and we will vote on the changes on August 3rd at our in-person meeting at the Sentinel. The changes involve how we elected members into the club, how often the board meets, and, ironically, how we make amendments to the bylaws and constitution. Now, please welcome Rotarian Don Livingston to tell you a little bit about an upcoming service project. Here's Don.
Yes, the Planet Earth Committee has teamed up with Solve to put together a public service opportunity, and it's actually going to take place this Thursday at 10 a.m. from 10 to noon at 72nd and Foster. And I've actually got that on this Google map right here to show you. We're going to meet at this Portland Mercado, which is this facility. Let's see, I'm not seeing it right now. Where is it? It's over here, right here. And that's interesting. Oh, it's over here. Anyway, we're going to be doing a sidewalk sweep covering up, and we already have 10 volunteers signed up. We could use 10 more. So if you want to sign up for this, just contact me at my email, don@beautifulbuildings.com. And this is the site that we're going to meet at. And when we're done doing about an 80 block area, Solve will provide the bags and the trash pluckers and the high-vis vests and the gloves. We're going to meet in this parking lot, and then afterwards, these are food trucks, and this is a covered area with about 10 picnic tables, and we'll have lunch. So it's really from 10 to 1, including lunch if you stay for that. So that's my announcement.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate that. And thank you for getting our club involved with that service project. That is the exact service that we're talking about that changes lives. So I appreciate that. Now, please welcome our newest Vice President, Rotarian Maria Schell, to tell you about an upcoming social event.
Maria is actually not here today, so I'm going to give a quick rundown. Next Wednesday, July 21st, we're doing our quarterly Meet the New Rotarians social. It will be from about 4:30 to 6, and more details on the location will come, but we're working on it being an in-person event this time, not over Zoom. So keep your eye out on those details.
Okay, thank you, Siobhan, for stepping in there for Maria about that event we have coming up shortly. And now we're going to take a quick break to socialize with our fellow Rotarians. We're going to disappear and split into smaller groups for a virtual table talk. Please be sure to introduce yourselves to the others in your group. For those of you that need an icebreaker, let's revisit the 4th of July holiday and what you did this year versus in years past. And here we go. And now time for our program. After our speaker today is finished, if you'd like to ask a question, Corinne will moderate the Q&A through the chat box. Now, please welcome past district governor, past president, and current pillar of our club. She does it all. Please welcome Rotarian Danielle Banks as today's chair of the day.
Thank you, President Reed. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker, Vince Elmore. Vince grew up in South Carolina, spent his summers in New York with his family, attended Orangeburg Calhoun College, and during his military career was assigned to Fort Bragg in North Carolina, the 82nd Airborne Division. During his 29-year law enforcement career, he's been a community policing advocate and a liaison with clergy and community groups. He continues to work to assure transparency and accountability in law enforcement agencies. Vince has completed thousands of hours of police training, has trained and coached many, and has held multiple command assignments. In the last 2 years of his service with the Portland Police Bureau, Vince was pivotal in implementing policy changes brought about by the Police Bureau's settlement agreement with the Department of Justice. In addition to working in the Portland Police Bureau, Vince has served as Chief of Police for Campus Safety and Security at PSU. He received the NAACP's Community Policing Officer of the Year Award in 2017. Vince is a highly respected leader and mentor in our community. He's known for building bridges and for developing relationships between the police and young African American community members. He impacts the community through service. Doesn't that sound familiar? And groups such as the Interfaith Peace and Action Collaborative, No Hate Zone, Community Peace Collaborative, and Word is Bond, where he serves on the board with a new member of ours, Lakiana Drury, who is the exec director and founded Word is Bond. Those of us who know Vince call him Chief. So please give a warm Portland Rotary welcome to IPR investigator Vince Elmore. Chief?
Well, it's good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's great to see some faces. I see Phil on here. I know Phil so well. Thank you. Such a nice man. Leslie is here, and I love your breakout session. I made a new friend, Virginia Archer. She's gonna do windsurfing and kiteboarding, and she's gonna teach me that. And we're gonna see how that goes. And I told her that if it's a fail, there's always the wineries, and we'll be fine. So, first of all, what you need to know is I'm a community advocate for what we do in our community. And Danielle, I mean, Ms. Banks is just such a resource to the IPAC and all the groups I've been involved. I've learned so much from you, and I really respect you and thank you for what you've done. As we work together, our journey is not over, of course. So we have 20 minutes and I want to get to it. She's giving my background. Jim Crow, South Carolina, grew up there. I mean, when people say that, you got to understand. I remember running from the Klan the first time, the Ku Klux Klan, when I was 9 years old. By the time I was 18 and 19, I wasn't running away anymore. And there's a reason for that. So I understand the aspects of those things in the Deep South and the deep-rooted environments of racism, okay? Institutionalized racism, those pieces. Be very clear. When I first started my law enforcement career out of the U.S. Special Operations at Fort Bragg, I thought we should put everyone in jail. We'll sort it out later. I met a lady by the name of Edna Robinson. She changed my life. She changed my career. She said to me, she said, Vince, I heard you a very good a very good soldier. She said, but you're not a very good police officer. And I said, okay. I knew you're the head of the neighborhood association. You're well respected, but you know, I've been doing this for, 2 years and I'm good at this. And she said, no, you're not. She said, because you don't understand your community and I'm not sure you care about your community. My career changed at that point in time. When you talk about my career, I've been on both sides of the house. I've been the command police officer in one environment, dealing with complaints, and now I'm an investigator investigating the complaints. When you talk about the process as a whole, there's 18,500 police departments in the United States. There's probably approximately less than 200 oversight committees that investigate police that have civilian and have independence. That means they're independent of the police bureau. And that's what IPR is. So I'm not talking to you as a manager or the head of, I'm talking to you as an investigator, as a person who's on the ground doing the work. So when we talk about our organization, first of all, the number, if you want to file a complaint, is 503-823-0146, and you will get a complaint. And we take complaints by mail, by email, by text, by carrier pigeon. We'll take it. We'll take your complaint. And I want people, and I say that, and people go, well, this is a serious matter. You got to understand, vulnerable folks don't have computers. They don't have access. And the job, my job and our job at IPR is to make sure that our most vulnerable human beings, the people in our community, have access to the complaint process. So when we talk about complaints, when I talked to Ms. Banks, she said I should just break it down and make it very simple. So I'm gonna have 4 examples for you, which will lead to your Q&A. Let's say Phil is walking in the park, and we know Phil is a suspicious looking guy. There's a lot of vice going on in the park. And the police see Phil, and they stop him and they detain him. They ask him, can they search him? Well, Phil has nothing to hide, so he lets them search him. Phil is not happy about this. They find no drugs, they find no paraphernalia, they find nothing. But this is a high vice area. This is an area where drugs are being sold, drugs are being purchased, and so on. Phil doesn't know that. Well, Phil's upset. What does Phil do? Phil calls 823-0146. He files complaint about the way he was treated. The questions were not answered. He didn't feel that he should have been stopped. And that process is sent to an investigator. That investigators, that whole process, such as witnesses, personnel with their statements by the officer and Phil. At that point in time, that finding is sent forward and an evaluation is made of that. At that point in time, a decision is made whether there should be discipline or a minimal environment of a process of understanding what happened and why it happened, and mediation if Phil wants that. If he does not, that will go to a process, and then there's a discipline process. The chief will make a finding on that. That's primarily a simple process, but the chief makes a decision. If Phil doesn't agree with it, it goes to the Citizen Review Board. You've heard about it, seen it on TV, seen it in the news media, CRC. At that point in time, Phil says, I don't like what the police bureau gave me back. I don't like that. I think something else should be done. CRC evaluates it. They send that back to the chief. The chief says, well, I disagree with CRC. Then it goes to city council. City council makes a final decision. And it's not that simplistic. And I think you all know that. You're very intelligent people. But that's kind of the process in a cook, because you have been told by politicians in the media and on radio, whatever it may be, that IPR investigates policemen that kill people, and then IPR lets them go. That is not true. The Independent Police Review does not investigate officer-involved shootings. That's professional standards in the Internal Affairs Division. So a lot of people were led in the wrong direction by comments made that were not related to what we do on a day-to-day basis. So let me give another example. It's a traffic stop, okay? And Miss Banks down there, we know her, she drives a little fast sometimes. She's driving a little fast. And she gets pulled over, and the officer says, well, you're driving fast and you have a taillight out. And then the officer decides to give her a thesis on how she should live her life and so on and so forth, which has nothing to do with the traffic stop, because we should be talking about the ticket and what the violation was. and they're there for 30 minutes and Ms. Banks is offended by that. She can file a complaint with my office at 823-0146 and say that I was offended by the way by the officer talked to me, what he talked to me about, and those environments. And per se, not about saying, well, yes, I was speeding, and yes, I did have a taillight out. That's fine. That will be factual information, but the environment of how you were treated by the officer, that would be investigated through the same process. Another example, a traffic accident. You're in an accident and you're upset because accidents happen, they're unexpected, and hopefully they're non-injury, okay? You feel someone's at fault, they feel you're at fault. The officer arrives on scene, they take you to a quiet place away from everyone, and they tell you that what you did was your driving was not within the process of what we should be doing on our streets and driving. They're talking about what happened when they haven't asked one question. They haven't talked to one witness. They haven't done anything. At that point in time, you're going to be upset about that. They go over and talk to someone else about it for a few minutes. They come back to you, and then they issue you a ticket. Well, at that point in time, it's about process. We should talk to everyone, get the information, and then disseminate and make a decision. And sometimes you can give both people tickets, right? That wasn't done. If you're not happy about the process, you can file a complaint with our office. We'll review it and look at how it could be done in a better manner from communicating with our members in the community. These are simple. So I want you to get the environment of what complaints look like. Now, the complaint that you're familiar with, because you see it in the news all the time, is a protest. Let's say Black Tuesday, which was June 6th. I remember it well because my children and kids from all over the metropolitan area that were part of affinity groups and different groups and diversity groups were attending a protest on that day over George Floyd's death. You're in a crowd. That crowd is, everyone is not peaceful. There are people that are violent, not you. All of us in this room, let's put all of us in this room at the protest. And we're there. And it's getting violent, and we decide maybe we should leave. Well, some of the violence continues. There is unlawful assembly announced repeatedly for periods of time, anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes, and tear gas is deployed. And you and all of us get tear gas. Can you file a complaint? Yes, you can. Because you felt that you were part of a peaceful protest, even though there were other people that were involved, and you were tear gas. The question is, were you given ample time to leave? Was that application appropriate? That's what I investigate. You take video, you take statements, you take information from everyone involved, the deployment, the command staff, and so on, and then you make a factual judgment on what you have. And you submit that to your supervisors. That goes over to Professional Standards, Internal Affairs. They make an evaluation. They send that finding up to the chief's office, and the chief makes an evaluation. And then if discipline is a part of that process, and they do have a discipline matrix, which we are not a part of, then they will go forward. And again, if the chief sends it forward, you do not agree, CRC receives it, they agree with you, the chief does not agree with the CRC, then it goes to city council. So I've tried to give you a simplistic environment of some things that happen, not per se being protesters, even though we had 150 days of protesting in the city of Portland, but more or less the first three environments of what happens when you need to file a complaint involving the Portland Police Bureau. Now, if you want to file a complaint against the Multnomah County Sheriff, that's not what we do. And a lot of people think our PR does. The Oregon State Police, that goes to the Oregon State Police. Hillsborough, Beaverton. And all of those agencies do not have an independent police review. And people need to be aware of that also. Now, we work with NACO, National Association of Environments, where we have investigators that deal with police oversight. and a part of that 100 and less than 200 group. I think there are more oversight groups now that we've had the situation with George Floyd and the many other environments that we could talk about, that police accountability was not at the forefront of different organizations or specific cities. So that is ongoing, and those numbers are going up now. What those boards look like, I have no idea. I'm not sure if anyone has come up with a process that works for everyone. When you're talking about labor unions, we're talking about different labor agreements. We're talking about all those environments that go into that, and that's a difficult process for everyone. So nationally, it's on the forefront oversight. When I think when I came over 2.5, 3 years ago, it wasn't on the forefront for a lot of people. People talked about it, but it was not on the forefront. So from my standpoint, it's something that needs to be addressed, something that we need to have, but it needs to be an environment that's explained to the citizens so they understand it. And Ms. Banks and Phil and others that I talked about understand it better now because we've had conversations about it. But there are many times that people talk about police oversight, but they have no idea what it really entails. So I've given you some examples. I'll give you an environment, what happens within the Portland Police Bureau doesn't reflect any other departments in the metropolitan area, including Portland State where I work as a interim chief. So I wanted you to understand how regionally it looks. Nationally, they're still trying to work it out. And locally, we're still trying to work out those pieces too with the DOJ, which I was a part of the Community Oversight and Advisory Board for the DOJ for the Portland Police Bureau for a couple of years. And very familiar with their process and how that is carried out. And that is kind of happening right now. So with that being said, are we ready for question and answer? Danielle?
Looks like we have a question from Phil.
Okay.
Chief. Yeah, for two things. When you get a complaint about an officer, whether it be process or anything that you gave an example of, is reviewing the officer's history with the Bureau part of that process?
Reviewing a history with the Bureau is not a part of our process. It's a part of the process when it's reviewed by their command staff.
Okay, but they do that. They do actually, okay. Because I mean, that certainly makes a difference in how you might respond from a disciplinary perspective based on what that officer's history is.
Yes, and remember, Phil, when we go back to it, and you and I have talked about this and been in breakouts, and that's a good question. But remember, IPR deals in the facts of that case only. People have led you to believe that we go into the backgrounds of the officers, and we don't do any of that. Those were false statements made by politicians. And you can talk about that later, who those politicians are. I can't. But I do the work. We investigate the facts and we take the facts forward. We don't look at anything except what happened with Phil when he was in the park that day. And we'll look at it and then we send it to our supervisors and then they're evaluated and the background that officers looked at it another time. And we're not asked about that. That's not a part. If you want us to be a part of that, that can change.
Well, no, and actually my concern was that somebody looked at the history, because in terms of how that's responded to by the Bureau is an important part, especially, I mean, if you just think about Derek Chauvin and his history.
Yes.
Then the second thing is, very quickly, I know that a lot of times the Bureau will make a disciplinary decision about a situation with an officer, and it goes to arbitration. And the arbitrator overturns the Bureau's decision about how to manage that situation with that officer. Are you comfortable commenting about what your thoughts are about how that is worked to interfere with improving policing?
Well, with respect to the process, Phil, I'm not going to talk about specific arbitrations or specific cases. You
No,
understand?
no.
But I can give you an example of me. As a police lieutenant, I had an environment where I had to go before arbitration. That is completed and done. It's not a reflected of public record at this point in time. But the one thing I learned, and I understood the process because I'd worked in BHR, I was a union rep and helped officers do that. I've been a part of 3 contracts negotiations, so I understood the process. Arbitrators deal in fact. They don't deal in emotion. They don't deal in what you think or what you want to. They deal in facts. And I was embarrassed a little bit because my writing wasn't, it was factual, but there was a lot of other things that didn't need to be there. And the arbitrator made me aware of it. And I'll never forget that interaction. I learned a lot on that day. So when you talk about those processes, as a former homicide investigator, it's about the facts. And sometimes people don't want to deal with the facts of the environment, and that makes it difficult. So that's just my comment. And from what I learned and from my own mistakes from that environment. So it's about the facts. I hope that didn't answer your question, but I'm hoping it did.
No, and I think your comment about it being really important that we understand how things are handled with the police bureau and not deal in rumors.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Thank
All
you.
right, our next question is Virginia.
Well, hi. I have a couple of questions. I used to run a nonprofit that worked with youth in detention in Louisiana. So one of my questions would be, can minors make complaints? And then second, do you ever see complaints come from people who have been through the detention centers, like the jails? And then third, I'd love for you to be able to speak to whether you see the citizen review component of your work influence the reform work at the department. So this seems like a pretty important feedback channel from the communities. And I wonder if you see some of this feedback getting incorporated into just bettering the policing in the city.
Well, yes, I think any feedback in any environment where people are trying to help you get better, you should take, Virginia. And so the youth can file a complaint. We'd prefer that the adult is with them so that you can talk to a child. You would not like to want to have an environment where you're talking to a young person without their parents or without their legal guardians, but they can file a complaint. That is correct. That process is the same. But more than that, not just in what I do on a day-to-day basis, but the after-hour thing that a lot of you do already in service, word is bond. We take young men, African-American men, and when they have an encounter with police officers that did not go well, and we address that situation with that police department, we bring that young man, that police officer together, we rewrite the scenario and how it should have been done and how it should have happened. And in some cases, the young person, they weren't acting as they should have, and the officer wasn't going by process and by procedure. And now we both learn, and then we take that scenario and we present that to other police departments. The only problem I have is sometimes police departments that we take this process to them, Virginia, and they don't want to be involved. And very clear, let's be very clear, you can't run these programs off of air. It takes money. It takes money. When people talk to me about any project and so forth, I go, show me the budget, and now we'll move forward because we need money to do that. And so the police departments in some cases don't want to come forward with the pieces of supporting the process, but they want to get the information. And we are doing that with many in the regional area, and it's going well. And in Virginia example is officers sitting in training, word is bond is speaking, and the young man gives a scenario, and the officer is sitting in the room. Now the officer has to make a decision because we know who you are. And we're going to wonder if you're going to say something. And in many cases, the officers go, yeah, that was me. In other cases, they don't. And then we go, yeah, that was you. And now how do we come to a better place with the youth and the police department? Now the CRC, I'm not going to make many comments about the CRC and what they do or how they do it. The selection process is on our website. You can take a look at it. But I feel that any entity that brings about question to environments that can make our police department, our fire department, any of our departments in the city better is a good environment, because we need to be able to ask the question. Remember, I said to you, and I say this to people all the time, remember, I came from the Jim Crow South, okay? When I got pulled over by the police, there weren't any questions asked except for me. And I remember one police officer, and I'm gonna not make this a long story, he pulled me over and he never called me by my name. He used the N-word for every time he talked, every time he was supposed to say my name. And I remember it clearly. He said it about 9 times. Fast forward, now Sergeant Elmore in the Portland Police Bureau, and I am a national trainer for the Gang Resistant Education and Training Program, which we teach youth how to stay out of gangs and drugs and so on, and we help their families. So I'm in Brunswick, Georgia, and I am teaching. They asked me after my presentation to go back down to South Carolina, where I'm from, to teach a regional training. Guess who was in the training? That officer, still an officer, because he was a lieutenant, but he got demoted because he berated a young Black lady in an IGA store, which is, some of you don't know the IGA store from the South, Louisiana, probably yes. And he berated her, but her best friend's father was a part of the city council. So they went home, young lady upset, made them aware of it, it filed a complaint, and he wasn't a lieutenant anymore. He was bumped back to an, so he's an officer. So now I outrank him. This is 20 some years later. You got to remember this. You got to remember. So I'm going to college, and you got to remember, in the South, you're just a police officer because, well, Phil's daddy was the sergeant, so now I get to be an officer. I don't really go through a process. It's just I'm Phil's son, so I'm gonna be an officer. I'm a white guy, so I'm gonna be an officer. So when people look at that number, they go, well, how does that work? Well, he was only like 21, 22, and I was like 18, you know? So I go to the training and he's there, and I see him. And I go, and I have to call one of my friends who used to be in the car with me when they pulled me over, and I go, Michael is the Deputy Director of Government Affairs for the state of Maryland. He was always the smartest kid in school. He's the best man in my wedding. And I go, what should I do? And he said, do what your heart tells you to do. And I introduced myself, and I introduced myself from the community of South Carolina, Allendale Fairfax High School, and all that. And people are like, whoa, we didn't know you were from here. And I go, thank you, Gator. That's his name. I said, thank you for pulling me over and being negative and letting me know how a police officer should never, ever act, ever. And he just went. And his chief and the superintendent of the state police was sitting right there. And he was a white male, nice man. I'd met him, and he turned red. And he went, and you could see his, and he as I'm finishing, there's a question to answer. He goes, I need to talk to you after this. And but it was one of those moments that you can't script. It just happened. But that was in it. So believe me, when I talk about police oversight, when I talk about community, it's not from what I read. It's a lived experience for me. I hope that answers your question, Virginia.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions for Vince? All right, Reed, back to you.
Thank you, Corinne, and thank you so much, Vince. Appreciate your presentation, all your stories. Learned a lot. It's really important for everybody to know how the police operates and what are the checks and balances in place there to make sure that everybody's staying in their lane and doing as they should be. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. And next week, we will hear from Dr. Joe Dang, the director of ECMO, that's ECMO. We'll be learning about the ECMO machine, which is the extracorporeal membrane oxygenation machine. Chris, how'd I do?
You did great. So the trick is Joe has led a team that has used ECMO to treat patients with COVID. And the team at Emmanuel Hospital has gone out into the community to pick up patients from the community to treat them with ECMO. And they've been uniquely successful applying this technology in the United States. Their success rate is measurably higher than almost every place else. So he's going to tell the story of using this technology, which we often use on preemies, to treat patients with COVID.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that little tidbit. Should be another awesome meeting. I look forward to having you all back here next Tuesday at noon. And I'd like to thank Patrick for your reflection and to Daniil for providing our speaker introduction today. Lastly, thank you so much, Vince. We appreciate you taking the time to speak to our club. It was a great presentation and we would welcome you back anytime as a guest or maybe even a future Rotarian. There you go. As we close today's meeting, let's all remember why we are here. We serve to change lives. Let's continue to focus on the lives that we change and continue to step up and do the right thing. Thanks again for joining. This meeting is adjourned.